Chapter 43. Wrong Use of the Testimonies.
Some who believe the testimonies have erred by urging them unduly upon others. In Volume 1, Number 8, is a testimony bearing upon this point. There were some in blank who were God's children and yet doubted the visions. Others had no opposition, yet dared not to take a decided stand in regard to them. Some were skeptical, and they had sufficient cause to make them so. The false visions and fanatical exercises and the wretched fruits following had an influence upon the cause in blank to make minds jealous of everything bearing the name of visions. All these things should have been taken into consideration and wisdom exercised. There should be no trial or labor with those who have never seen the individual having visions, and who have had no personal knowledge of the influence of the visions. Such should not be deprived of the benefits and privileges of the church if their Christian course is otherwise correct. Some, I was shown, could receive the published visions, judging of the tree by its fruits. Others are like doubting Thomas. They cannot believe the published testimonies, nor receive evidence through the testimony of others, but must see and have the evidence for themselves. Such must not be set aside, but long patience and brotherly love should be exercised toward them until they find their position and become established for or against. If they fight against the visions, of which they have no knowledge, if they carry their opposition so far as to oppose that in which they have had no experience, the church may know that they are not right. Some of our brethren had had long experience in the truth, and for years had been acquainted with me and my work. They had proved the truthfulness of the testimonies and had asserted their belief in them. They had felt the powerful influence of the Spirit of God resting upon them to witness for their truthfulness. I was shown that if such, when reproved through the testimonies, should rise up against them and work secretly to lessen their influence, they should be faithfully dealt with, for their course would endanger those who were lacking in experience. The first number of the testimonies ever published contains a warning against the injudicious use of the light which is thus given to God's people. I stated that some had taken an unwise course. When they had talked their faith to unbelievers and the proof had been asked for, they had read from my writings instead of going to the Bible for proof. It was shown me that this course was inconsistent and would prejudice unbelievers against the truth. The testimonies can have no weight with those who know nothing of their spirit. They should not be referred to in such cases. Other warnings concerning the use of the testimonies have been given from time to time as follows. Some of the preachers are far behind. They profess to believe the testimony borne, and some do harm by making them an iron rule for those who have had no experience in reference to them, but they fail to carry them out themselves. They have had repeated testimonies which they have utterly disregarded. The course of such is not consistent. I saw that many have taken advantage of what God has shown in regard to the sins and wrongs of others. They have taken the extreme meaning of what has been shown in vision, and then have pressed it until it has a tendency to weaken the faith of many in what God has shown, and also to discourage and dishearten the church. The enemy will seize upon everything which he can use to destroy souls. Testimonies have been borne in favor of individuals occupying important positions. They commence well to lift the burdens and act their part in connection with the work of God. But Satan pursues them with his temptations, and they are finally overcome. As others look upon their wrong course, Satan suggests to their minds that there must be a mistake in the testimonies given for these persons. Else these men would not have proved themselves unworthy to bear a part in the work of God. Thus, doubts arise in regard to the light that God has given. That which can be said of men under certain circumstances cannot be said of them under other circumstances. Men are weak in moral power, and so supremely selfish, so self-sufficient, and so easily puffed up with vain conceit that God cannot work in connection with them, and they are left to move like blind men and to manifest so great weakness and folly that many are astonished that such individuals should ever have been accepted and acknowledged as worthy of having any connection with God's work. This is just what Satan designed. This was his object from the time he first specially tempted them to reproach the cause of God and to cast reflections upon the testimonies. Had they remained where their influence would not have been specially felt upon the cause of God, Satan would not have beset them so fiercely, for he could not have accomplished his purpose by using them as his instruments to do a special work.